Chapter 13. I trust my axe. The first enemy spell touched the pass and found a lie. It came up the lower road in a clean white line, narrow enough for a sword to answer and bright enough to make rain vanish around it. Saren stepped from behind the wagon shield exactly where Bram had marked the mud. Her blade caught the line. Kale braced her from the left, Marith from the right. 3 swords making a shape Bram could not have named, and would never pretend to understand. The spell grounded through steel into the buried cart shield. Mud jumped. The light broke sideways into the slick stones Bram had turned that morning and scattered in a useless fan across the road. Dane whooped once from the upper rope line.
Quiet.
The enemy did not need help learning. They learned quickly enough without it. The first failed spell told them the sword line was not merely desperate. The broken light told them something had been buried under the mud. The way the Van Mark line did not chase told them discipline held where panic should have been. Bram could almost see the facts moving through the enemy ranks by gesture and glance. A shield shifted 2 handspans left. An archer stopped aiming at faces and began aiming at hands. The forward caster lowered his staff, not in defeat, but in thought. That frightened Bram more than a second blast would have. Bad enemies made courage look important. Good enemies made preparation spend itself faster than planned. Below the bend, Elphastic soldiers advanced under wet gray cloaks. Shield pairs first, archers behind. 2 casters Bram could see and one he could only feel from the way everyone below kept leaving space around a pale figure in the rear. Litharian had come to the pass. Bram did not let himself look too long. Looking too long turned grief into a straight road, and straight roads killed people. Still, every part of him counted the distance. From upper rope to black shelf. From black shelf to lower bend. From lower bend to staff. Too far. Too open. Too many bodies between. The numbers arranged themselves in his head without permission, cruel and clean. At the ridge, distance had been a wall. Here, he had spent a whole day teaching the mountain to put corners into it.
Runner left.
Joran shouted from the shelf. The enemy shifted faster than Bram liked. One caster probed the upper brush with small cutting sparks, not wasting power, only asking the pass where it hurt. The first spark hit the brush Bram had replanted over a stone pocket and died in wet leaves. The second found real cover and burned through. A swordman below called something in Elvish. The third spark went wide around Saren's marked line and struck the wagon shield from the side. It split. Wood burst. A mule screamed behind the shelf. Someone went down with a shard in his thigh. So much for the first lie. The man with the shard did not scream like people did in stories. He made a surprised little sound, then a wet one, then began apologizing to the healer. Before she reached him. That frightened Bram more than noise would have. Joran dragged him back by the straps under his arms, face set, boots slipping, while Dane kept the rope line with his good hand and pretended not to see. The pass was already taking payment.
Hold marked ground.
Her voice cut clean through the rain. The sword line adjusted, not chasing the enemy's feints. Good. Bram had been afraid someone would try to turn every spell with bravery. Bravery was useful only after sense had chosen where to stand. The second sword line formed behind the first. Not as clean as Saren's. 3 grunts with blades, one with a dented shield, Kale shouting positions at them while bleeding through his sleeve. They did not look noble. Darius, that terror had not excused them from geometry.
Half step.
One man moved too far. Saren slapped his guard with the flat of her blade without looking back.
Half step.
He corrected. A narrow spark came through the rain and kissed the edge of his shield. The corrected half step put the shield where his throat had been. The man stared at the smoking metal.
Admire later.
He raised the shield again. Brahm stored that away. It mattered. Sword drills were not court dances wearing steel. They were small decisions made before terror stole the body. Brahm crouched beside the first rope and watched the lower bend. The trap there depended on patience. The leaning pines above the road wanted to fall. The cut root wanted to give. The rain wanted to help. The rope wanted to snap. Everyone wanted to pull too early. Dane lay on his stomach beside the second knot, good hand wrapped in hemp, splinted wrist tucked against his chest.
Now?
No.
How about now?
Still no.
I hate your tree.
It hates you back.
In a warmer valley, it might have been funny. Below, the enemy blade screen reached the bend. Their forward caster paused exactly where Brahm had hoped he would not. 3 paces shy of the slick stones. Smart. He lifted a short staff, darker at the tip, and spoke a prayer into the rain. The air above the bend tightened. The spell did not narrow into a blade line. It pressed down across the road. Saren saw it. So did Marith. They could not catch that.
Down.
The spell pressed into the road and flattened the first wagon barricade, as if a giant hand had grown tired of toys. Wheels cracked. The buried shield vanished under mud. A soldier behind it screamed and did not stop. The pass shuddered. Bram's plan held. Partly. The lower road was still blocked, but the enemy had learned not to spend narrow spellwork into prepared steel. They were crushing cover instead, making new sightlines by removing the things Brahm had asked to stand between bodies and light. Litharian had not lifted his staff yet. That was worse.
Alder, look.
He looked down. She was pointing with her blade, not at the forward caster, but at the rear. The pale figure had moved to the side of the road where a shelf of black stone overlooked the bend. From there, a clean lane opened past the pines, past the wagon shelf straight toward Joran's runner path. Bram's stomach dropped. He had missed that shelf. No, not missed. He had seen it and thought the approach too narrow under rain. Litharian had better feet than Bram wanted him to have.
He'll take the runners.
His voice was calm in the terrified way of someone naming the exact shape of the knife.
Move them.
To where?
There was nowhere. Not fast enough. The forward caster sent another pressure wave into the barricade. The cracked wagon shifted. The road opened by a cart's width. Enemy soldiers began to climb through. Saren and Kale met them at the gap. Steel rang. Not pretty steel. Hard, close, ugly steel. Saren's bandaged hand slipped on her hilt. CL stepped into the strike meant for it and took a cut along his arm without changing expression. Sword users were not decoration. They were the only reason Bram had seconds to think. The enemy understood that too. 2 archers shifted their aim away from the runners and toward the blade line. 1 arrow struck Saren's shoulder guard and glanced off. The second punched through the loose cloth above Kale's elbow. He did not drop his sword. He did not even look at it, which told Bram it had hurt badly enough to be saved for later. Marith crossed behind them with a shield taken from a fallen man and placed it where Saren's next retreating step would need to be. Not where Saren stood, where she would be. That was skill too. Seeing the next place someone would need the ground to exist, he looked at the black stone shelf. The Therian's staff was not like the Ford wand. No, not. no flaw Bram could see from here. But the shelf under him had a runoff channel cutting behind it, thin and brown and hidden by grass. Footing. The staff could wait. The ground under it could not. Bram seized the rope. Dane's eyes widened.
Now?
Half,
Half what?
half pull.
Dane pulled. Fear had finally met an order it understood. The leaning pines shifted above the lower bend. They did not fall. They groaned. Branches scraping stone while mud spilled down. Every eye below flicked up, including Witharian's. The pale mage did not flinch. He took one measured step back on the black shelf, exactly as Bram had wanted him to do. The runoff channel behind his heel gave a little. Not enough. Litharian looked toward the upper rope line. Then he smiled. The next spell did not come down the road. It tore through the cover beside Bram. The pine he had trusted split open in a white flash. Heat slapped rain into steam. Dane yelled and rolled away, sleeve smoking. The rope snapped loose, whipping across Bram's cheek hard enough to draw blood. The leaning pines above the bend lurched but did not fall. The plan broke open. Bram hit the mud, ears ringing, and saw through steam that the enemy focus team had reached the lower gap. One caster stood under the half-fallen pines, staff raised, feeding Litharian a clean lane through the pass. If that focus held, the upper shelf would be next. Bram pushed himself up. His shoulder tried to climb. He drove the fear down his legs until his boots spit mud. The pass had given him a door. It was narrow, burning, and closing. Bram did not run at Litharian. That was the first victory. Everything in him wanted the pale figure on the black stone shelf. Every part that had held Alira's blood heard clean ink name her death, spared CRL, and hated how mercy left questions alive. Litharian stood above the road with his staff in one hand and the pass arranged beneath him like something already understood. Bram turned toward the lower gap instead, toward the focus caster feeding him the lane. The caster stood beneath the leaning pines, boots braced in mud Bram had chosen, staff angled upward. Not helpless. Not lesser in any way that mattered while light moved through him. Two enemy swords guarded the approach, and a third archer knelt. Behind the broken wagon wheel, with a clear view of the road, Bram had no clear view. Good. Clear views belong to mages.
Saren, turn him.
She did not ask what. Her sword came up against the guard pressing her, caught his blade, and turned him half a step. Kale drove into the opening. Not elegantly, but with enough force to make the enemy line buckle. Marith saw the same gap and cut across the road, drawing the archer's next shot. The arrow scored her shoulder instead of Bram's throat. She did not cry out. Joran appeared above the shelf with a coil of spare rope.
Bad idea?
Yes.
Good.
He threw the coil. Bram caught it with his left hand and nearly lost 2 fingers to the speed. He looped it once around the axe haft, once around his wrist, and slid down the mud beside the shattered wagon. Before anyone had time to make the idea smarter, the world became slope. Mud took his boots. Stone struck his hip. Rain filled his eyes. He drove the axebeard into a root, swung under a broken branch, and dropped. Behind the first enemy sword instead of in front of him, the soldier turned fast. Bram hooked the back of his knee with the axe haft and pulled. The man went down hard. Bram did not stop to finish him. Kale was there a breath later, sword point making the fallen man still. The second guard came at Bram with a curved blade and good sense. He stayed outside the axe head, cutting at Bram's arms, forcing him to retreat toward open road. Open was death. Bram stepped where the mud was worst. The guard followed, seeing advantage. His front boot sank to the ankle. Bram did not swing at the man. He swung at the mud. The axe blade bit the soaked edge of the runoff channel and tore it open. Water under pressure burst across the guard's trapped boot. Bram drove his shoulder low, shoved him sideways, and felt the man's balance vanish into the pass itself. Saren's blade flashed past Bram's ear and caught a spell line he had not seen coming. The force drove her to one knee.
Don't make me do that twice.
She said through her teeth.
Trying.
The focus caster heard them. His staff came down from Lotharion's lane and pointed at Bram. Close enough now. Too close for comfort, not close enough for mercy. The caster was afraid. Bram saw it in the mouth first. The prayer rhythm tightening around a breath that wanted to shake. Fear did not make him weak. It made him faster. His hands corrected the staff angle. Before Bram could close another step, and the guard, behind him, the one Kale had not fully pinned, reached for Bram's ankle with a knife in his fist. Dane's arrow struck the knife hand. The arrowhead glanced shallow through the fingers, not enough to stop the man forever. Enough to make his grip open.
I meant his face!
Dane shouted from above.
Practice.
Bram shouted back. Terror had apparently made room for stupidity, and he was grateful for it. Bram saw the staff clearly for the first time. Mountain wood, dark heart. Prayer cuts spiraling along the grain, smaller than Lotharion's, less perfect but still careful. A metal sleeve reinforced the lower third where a sane woodworker would have worried about splitting. The weak place was not the sleeve. It was above it, where the grain twisted around a buried branch scar polished almost invisible. The caster's lips moved. Bram threw the rope, not at the caster, at the half-fallen pine above him. Joran had kept hold of the other end. Dane, somewhere above, understood late and grabbed it too. The rope snapped tight across the broken branch. The branch jerked. The leaning pine shifted one final inch. Everyone looked up. The caster did not. He kept his attention. Good training. Terrible luck. Bram crossed the last 2 steps while the staff gathered light. The spell hit his axe head. Iron did not parry it. The force blasted heat through his hands, filled his arms with white pain, and drove him backward half a step. His palms tore. The haft smoked. He did not need to stop the spell. He needed to ruin where it was going. Bram jammed the axe head under the metal sleeve. Not cutting, wedging. The caster tried to wrench the staff free. Bram went with the pull, stepped closer, and slammed his whole weight down through the haft. The buried scar opened. The staff split along the grain with a sound like a branch breaking under snow. Light lost its road. It burst upward into the leaning pines. For a heartbeat, the whole pass glowed. Then the pines fell. They missed the Von Mark line by less than Bram liked, and crashed across the lower bend in a roar of branches, mud, stones, and torn roots, splitting the focus lane and cutting Lotharion's clean sight to the upper shelf. Soldiers scattered. One enemy shield vanished under a root ball. The forward caster fell screaming, hands full of broken staff. Bram went down under the edge of a branch. Weight pinned his leg. Pain came late and deep. He tried to pull free and could not. Lotharion stood on the black shelf above, no longer smiling. Their eyes met through rain and fallen needles. For one mad second, Bram thought the mage would spend the next spell on him alone. Saren stepped into the lane. Then Kael. Then Marith, blood dark on her shoulder. 3 swords, none steady, all raised. Dane dragged himself to Brahm's side, face streaked with soot.
Always under something, aren't you?
Tree liked me.
Tree has poor taste.
Joran slid down beside them and jammed a wagon jack under the branch.
Lift when I say, not before. If you break your leg worse, I will be angry in a logistical manner.
Bram laughed. It hurt so badly he almost blacked out. Below, the enemy began to withdraw in formation, disciplined enough to carry what wounded they could, frightened enough to leave the broken focus behind. Litharian lowered his staff and stepped back from the black shelf. Before the runoff took more of it. Driven off would have to be enough. The pass still held. Holding did not look like winning at first. It looked like Joran crawling on hands and knees after a drop satchel of bandages slid downhill in the mud. It looked like Dane trying to stand with one wrist and one good knee while yelling for someone to check the man under the wagon shield. It looked like Saren staying in the lane after Litharian stepped back, her body still waiting for danger to end. Kale found the fallen Rusk charm at his collar had snapped in half. He stared at it for one breath, then tucked both pieces inside his coat and went to help Marith bind her shoulder. No horns, no songs. Only rain, orders, and the terrible work of remaining alive. The broken enemy staff lay in the mud where the caster had dropped it. No one touched it at first. That told Bram more than speeches would have. The thing was only wood now, split and smoking in weak curls, but soldiers stepped around it, as if a prayer might still be hiding in the grain with teeth bared. Even the healer gave it space while dragging the wounded focus caster clear of the fallen branches. Bram wanted to look away. Instead, he studied it. Fear was worse when left vague. The split had followed the buried scar exactly, opening along a dark crescent in the heartwood. The metal sleeve had held. The polished prayer cuts had held. The expensive work had done what it was meant to do, until one old weakness, hidden and dressed smooth, took the whole thing apart under pressure. He thought of people then, and wished he had not. The focus caster did not look like a monster while he cried over his ruined staff. He looked like someone whose hand had been cut off. 2 von Mark soldiers bound him while he rocked forward, forehead nearly touching the mud, whispering a line in Elfastic again and again. Marith heard it and went still.
What is he saying?
Bram asked before sense stopped him. Marith's mouth tightened.
An apology.
To who?
The staff.
Bram had no answer for that. The realm could count people like children, ration names, burn villages, and still teach a soldier to mourn wood more quickly than a man under a branch. Knowing that did not make the caster less dangerous. It made the danger harder to hate cleanly. Clean hatred would have been easier on the leg. When Joran and Dane levered the branch high, Bram dragged his leg free and nearly vomited from the pain. Saren caught his arm before he fell. Her grip was hard.
Alder, stay with me.
What?
She looked at the split staff smoking in the mud, then at his axe, then at him.
That was not luck.
Bram wanted to answer sharply. Something about trees writing reports. Something about mud having better manners than officers. Anything that would make the moment smaller. Instead, he looked past her. For one stupid breath, he searched the sword line for Elira. He found Marith, Kale, Saren, men he knew and men he did not. Rain, steam, broken wood, held ground, no Elira. Bram leaned on the axe and did not trust his voice.